Now, I'm very excited. On this edition of Isolation Interviews across Hospital Radio and my YouTube channel, my guest today is the fantastically talented Sanjeev Bhaskar. Thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome. Nice to see you.
Now, life as we know it is a little bit strange at the moment. How are you coping with lockdown? How are you coping with being kind of stuck at home?
Well, fortunately, I don't really like people, and so and people don't like me. So the self-isolating thing, I've been practicing for this moment for years. So no, it's been fine actually. I mean, we're very lucky. It's a great opportunity to count your blessings. It's very, very difficult for a lot of people out there. And, we're lucky we've got a nice house. We've got a family that gets on and plenty of sorting and tidying to do. So that's the thing that's taken over most of our time, I think.
Now, obviously, at the moment, it's one of these situations where a lot of people aren't able to necessarily work properly. Have you been able to do anything? Have you been able to do sort of, bits and pieces from home?
Yeah, it's been a few things like this, which have been very nice, and a few conversations about projects in the future that we can start thinking about. A lot of the time, particularly in my industry, if you're lucky, you're constantly kind of working to a deadline or trying to catch up with something or the other. So ironically, suddenly there is space and there's time to talk about those ideas that you don't normally get a chance to talk about or to certainly think about them. So a lot of that rather than anything concrete.
Now, one of the projects of yours, which I did find myself watching in lockdown, was the fantastic film that is Yesterday. Fantastic concept for a film. I thoroughly loved it, and it killed a few hours for me. For anyone who hasn't seen the film, describe the film and what it's about, because it is a fantastic concept, really.
Yeah, it's a romantic comedy, scripted by Richard Curtis, whose work people may be familiar with, but if they need reminding, it's Four Weddings and a Funeral and Notting Hill and Love Actually. And on TV, he's a behemoth. I mean, it's everything from Mr. Bean to Blackadder to The Vicar of Dibley. And it's the story about a 30-something singer-songwriter who's not really getting anywhere. He's nearly 30, and he hasn't got anywhere in his career. And through the magic of cinema, he gets knocked down by a bus and wakes up to find that he's the only person who knows anything about the Beatles. The Beatles never existed. So here's this songwriter who has access to the songs as he remembers them. He starts to sing the Beatles songs and becomes a huge star. And but then has to live with the guilt. He's actually... it's imposter syndrome done through a romantic comedy.
I mean, it is truly fantastic. Even has a sort of an appearance as John Lennon, who obviously, in the film is still alive, and he's obviously still with us. It's a great film. When you had the script came through to you, what was going through your mind? Because you must have thought this is going to be a success.
Yeah, I mean, I really liked it. I like the idea. I mean, I'm a huge Beatles fan anyway, so I was kind of, they were preaching to the converted in terms of the music. And it was just a really fun, lovely script. It wasn't cynical. It was quite old-fashioned, I thought. I mean, I auditioned for it, so it wasn't given to me. So you have that nerve-wracking experience of going in there and doing your best and hoping that you get it. But it was also the chance to work with Danny Boyle, Oscar-winning Danny Boyle, who won his Oscar for Slumdog Millionaire and has done so many other brilliant films as well. And I think perhaps most memorably for a lot of people, directed the Olympic opening ceremony in 2012, which is an extraordinary bit of work. So the chance to work with Richard, who I'd worked with before, and Danny, who I'd met before but never worked with, pushed the anxiety levels up when you go into audition, but I got lucky.
And of course, it has quite a big role with Ed Sheeran. So, are you a fan of his music, and what was it like to work with Ed?
I am a fan of his music. I think he's brilliant, and it was very exciting to meet him, I have to say. I think everybody was a bit starstruck that day that he came on set. I filmed with him for a day. We shot all of our scenes in one day. He was utterly lovely and open and generous and warm and very keen to learn about the process as much as anything else. But yeah, I've subsequently kept in touch with him, and he was delightful. And I think, you know, there's a few things that are more difficult than playing yourself in a movie, which may sound slightly bizarre and weird and ironic, but and yeah, that's what he's like. He's kind of smiley, open, and warm.
And of course, you got to work again with your other half, Meera Syal, who is again fantastic. You must love it when you get to work alongside someone that you really gel with.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to work with her because, I mean, that's how I started. And so we have a shorthand as well. The weird thing was, you know, we were shooting that day in the house in a scene with the family. We play a couple in it. And the main character, Jack, is our son. And it was the day we were filming with Ed Sheeran. And we were sitting on the sofa and people were setting up lights and we were going through our lines. And then we stopped and Meera kind of said, did we put the right recycling out the other day? And it was like two worlds were suddenly clashing. There was Ed Sheeran over there, and then there was did I put the recycling out over there? But yeah, it was lovely to work with her.
I mean, you've done so many great things together. Obviously, the Kumars, Goodness Gracious Me, all those projects. I mean, is it the comedy side of things that you prefer? Do you love the straight acting, or do you love the mixture of both?
Having choice is the biggest blessing you can have, and so being able to do all of those things, to do the drama, do comedy, do TV, do little bits in film and theatre and radio, is a joy. I mean, I like being creatively engaged, and I love being around creative people. And if those boxes are ticked, and I happen to get paid for it as well, there really can't be anything better.
Now, would you like to see a return for the Kumars? Because, I mean, they've been away for a little while, and I know that a lot of people would love to see them come back. So do you think there ever is a chance it could come back? And what would you like to see happen if it did come back?
I mean, I would love to. And obviously, you know, there are two members of the cast in this house who are ready to do it. Yeah, I don't think it's an idea that ages particularly, because it's about a family interviewing real celebrities. You know, these things go in cycles in terms of what's popular. Sketch shows, which I started on, aren't massively popular. They're not in at the moment, so there's not many of them around. But at some point, sketch shows will come back. So yeah, I would love to do it again. I mean, it was, as a performer, it was a really exciting mixture of a script and also total improvising as well. Going off the script, being led by the guest, and so we never primed the guest particularly beforehand. The guest could side with whoever within a family argument, and we just had to deal with it. And that was great fun to do. And hopefully, you know, that came across and people enjoyed that aspect of it. So yeah, in what form, I don't know, whether it's you know, TV, or whether it's radio, whether it's a podcast, or so yeah, I'd love to though.
I mean, one of the sort of most iconic moments for me anyway, and I know a few other people have said to me that they loved it, was obviously you guys appearing in the music video for a Gareth Gates song for charity, which obviously was just so well loved. I mean, you must have had so much fun filming that.
I mean, it still feels slightly weird for me to say out loud what I'm about to say out loud, which was, yeah, it was really weird being on top of the pops and being at number one. Yeah, that still sounds really weird. And I remember we were on the same show as Coldplay and Oasis. I mean, how weird is that? So, yeah, I mean, you have to pinch yourself. And we did the pop video in a day. So we started very early, 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, I think is when we got there, and then we finished at about 2 a.m. So it was a really long day. But yeah, I mean, outside of anything I could have possibly have imagined doing, you know, a pop video for a song that gets to number one, it still sounds really weird when I say it out loud.
And I mean, going from one extreme, I suppose, to another is, another role that you've done, which the nation loves, is obviously Unforgotten. For you, when you're doing that show, because obviously it's completely different to those shows we were talking about before, and obviously you get to work with Nicola Walker. I mean, first of all, what was it like when you first got into that show? And also, I mean, would you like to see more of it? Because everyone seems to love that show.
Well, that's very kind of you. Yeah. I mean, I was surprised when I got it. I'm still slightly surprised that I'm still in it. Yeah, because I hadn't done anything like that. I hadn't done serious drama as a series. I've done bits and pieces here and there, but not as a series. A returning character is what they call them. So yeah, I mean, I honestly, I went to the audition for that because I just wanted to meet the writer and just tell him face to face how brilliant his script was, and to wish him luck with the series. And so I was really quite taken aback when, I think it was the day after or maybe 2 days later, but quite quickly, my agent called and said they want you to do it. Nicola Walker is just amazing. I mean, she's amazing at what she does, but she's an amazing person. And if there's a gift that series has given me, has been a friendship with her. I kind of immediately, because you get together to read the script with the cast, and at the read through, I just thought, wow, I've really got to up my game here. All these people are so good. But it was particularly the first series, in particular, but all of them. But for me, is like an acting lesson. I mean, I'm 2 feet away from brilliant actors doing brilliant performances. So it's like having, the front seat at theatre, where you're seeing a brilliant performance. And so, I try to hang on basically by the fingernails onto all these incredible people around me. But it's as a series, I think the 3 series we've done so far, I think some of the best dramatic writing I've been involved in. We are actually about 2/3 of the way through series 4,
Okay.
when we all had to stop. So when we start again, we've got about a month to shoot on that, and that'll be series 4 in the can, as they say.
So just for anyone who hasn't seen the show, just give us a brief kind of explanation as to what happens in the show, because it is fantastic again.
It's on the face of it, it may sound quite familiar in that it's 2 detectives and their team who investigate very, very cold cases. So in the first series, it was a murder that occurred, we discover, in 1974. And then they try to piece together whatever they can to try to bring any culprit, if they still be living, to book today. And I think one of the things that appealed to me about the series, and one of the many reasons why I think it's so well written, is that you never drift too far from the impact of the crime. And so the people who are left, who were associated with this person and this moment or this evening many years ago, have generally moved on and lived their lives and have families and jobs and problems of their own, until one day they get that knock on the door from us to say, do you remember this person? And it's as much about what happens to those family units as it is what happens to the investigation. I've always believed that it's 4 or 5 mini dramas hidden within a whodunit. So the whodunit is there, and the big appeal for detective shows is that we, the audience, are the detective. We watch them trying to put together the clues, and we're trying to guess who done it from the people that we've been introduced to and stuff like that. So there's still that element there, but there's these very acutely observed stories of people who have been involved in this moment in which someone has tragically passed away.
Now, you have, like we were saying, had an absolutely amazing career, but is there a career highlight for you? Is there something, a role or a project you've worked on which was just like, miles ahead from the rest that you've thoroughly enjoyed?
Well, in terms of being unusual, and now that you've mentioned, doing a pop video and getting to #1, I can't think of anything that's kind of bigger than that. I suppose where I've been really lucky is I started quite late, and I didn't train or anything like that, didn't go to drama school. Um, I think the number of my heroes that I've met, and in some cases become friends with, is the thing that I find most extraordinary and humbling about what I've done. I think back to being 14 or 15 and having posters on my wall of these people, and I've met a load of them, and that feels really strange. But also, as a 15-year-old, it would, to my 15-year-old self, that would seem utterly impossible. It was so ludicrous that, in my bedroom, in my small bedroom, with these posters, not knowing, where I was going to go in my life, to think that I might meet some of these people, and then even more bonkers, be friends with some of them, is just really weird. So, those are my highlights, really. The work is always a highlight because, I learn from every job I do, and the Kumars is special because, goodness gracious me, is special because it was the first big thing I did, and Kumars is special because it was my idea that got on, and Unforgotten special because it was a step in a new direction. So they all, excuse me, hold a very special place in my heart. But although they're not strictly career highlights, I think the people I've met have been it, really.
Would you say there's a dream role going forward, or something you haven't done yet that you would love to do in the future?
Captain America. It's not going to happen. It's going to happen. Superhero or Bond, James Bond or something. None of those things are going to happen.
Well, I think because they are going to be looking for a new Bond when Daniel Craig steps down, so you never know. It could be the next Bond. I
am so far. I might be in for a shout to be Bond accountant.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I could be Bond. I could turn up and say, "Oh, Mr. Bond, I've done your books. There seems to be a discrepancy in your expenses." I could do that.
I'd love to see that. Hopefully we can make that happen. I just want to say it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. But before we go, is there anything you'd like to say to any of the patients who are listening in hospital, or anyone that's watching online?
I do. And this is something that you may not know, Matthew.
Oh, okay.
But if I told you that my first introduction to speaking to the public in any shape, way or form was hospital radio.
Oh, wow.
Would you be surprised?
I would be very surprised, yeah.
Radio West Middlesex Hospital in Twickenham, near Richmond, West London, was my first introduction. The first time I did a show. I used to do I spent a couple of years going around the wards, collecting requests and talking to patients, and helping with the record library. And then a guy left, and I got to do the weekly surprise movie show. So I'd sort of theme up shows and play music from the films, or have a theme of films and play music from that. So it's one of the reasons I said yes to you, is because hospital radio is something that is still that I have a great fondness for my time there and the people who worked there. One of the things that, I hope that patients recognise is that, people, obviously, they themselves, their families, feel for the fact that they are stuck in hospital. Nobody wants to be stuck in hospital. And outside of the care that the staff and I'm wearing my, there you go, choose our NHS t-shirt, outside the absolutely phenomenal, sterling work that NHS staff do, I hope they find it reassuring that the hospital radio teams around the country are thinking of them too. And although people have lots of choices in terms of what they can listen to, especially these days on smartphones and tablets and whatnot, whether it's watching something or listening to something, the hospital radio teams are there specifically for them, and it's an added resource. And so I wish all the patients well. I wish that their hospital stay is as short and as successful as possible so they can get back home. And in the meantime, put in your requests when you're asked.
Yes, of course. We'd love to hear from people. So yeah, Sanjeev, it's been an absolute pleasure. You've been so much fun to interview. So yeah, thank you. Of course, keep safe. Send all my best to all of your family and everyone. And yeah, thank you so much for joining me.
You too, you and yours too. Thanks, Matthew.